filibusters, because what I had asked you is, you said you want to drop nukes. So would you have dropped a nuke? I get your reasons why. You thoroughly explained how much you hate Saddam Hussein. I think we're all with you that he was a bad guy, a terrible dictator. So would you have dropped a nuke? I mean, that's what. And you get what I'm saying. I'm trying to figure out: do you really mean it? Is it just a joke? If it's a joke, they don't get that it's a joke. It could be dangerous. Would you have dropped a nuke?
Nuke, daisy cutter, drone, it doesn't matter. And by the way, this complaint about filibustering, the way question and answer is supposed to work is the question and then the answer. And I've given the same answer now 16 times.
Okay, so now for my rule, I'll move on because you clearly answered it. You would have dropped a nuke, and Saddam probably would have died, as well as maybe a million other people.
Uday and Qusay.
And 995,000 innocent people, babies burned alive. But hey, we're having fun. It's a hyperbole.
It's not hyperbole, and I know this is apparently mostly an audience that doesn't really care about 9/11, but I'm an American and I care about it.
So let's go to 9/11. I was going to go to immigration, but you mentioned 9/11.
Wow. So Ann Coulter not getting any love there at all from the crowd, basically saying that this crowd doesn't really care about 9/11. So she certainly has a way of stating things. She certainly has a way of needling people. And I think Cenk is doing a pretty good job here of asking the questions. I know he does his antics like we all do, to try to get his point across in the way that he loves to go ahead and, present, in his style. So that's fine. And bombastic, says things. Sometimes you got to take it with context. Sometimes you're left scratching your head saying, could she have said it another way? And she probably realizes that she could have said it another way, but she says it in that provocative manner that gets people to either, side with her 100% or close to it, or completely go against her, on the other side. And that comment that she made about 9/11 certainly did not go over well, with the crowd, because she was basically questioning their patriotism and their feelings for what happened on 9/11. And so I think she really wanted to stir the pot on that one. Anyways, let's continue.
Said about the 9/11 widows. They believe the entire country was required to marinate in their exquisite personal agony. This is about the 9/11 widows. These broads are millionaires, lionized on TV and in articles about them, reveling in their status as celebrities and stalked by grieferazis. I have never seen people enjoying their husband's death so much. Another hyperbole?
Nope.
So you're now saying you're outraged by 9/11, except for the people who lost family members there, who you think are horrible people and enjoying their husband's death.
No, they were using these women, their status as victims, to promote political points. And no, actually, most 9/11 the families were really quite happy with what I had to say.
So you didn't mind using 9/11 for your regime change that you wanted to do, a political move that you just said you wanted to do regime change that was political, and you used 9/11 as an excuse to do it. They lost their family members, but you had the nerve and the gall to want to attack 9/11 victims.
Right, I mean, I think this has been going over so many times in the last decade, it's kind of a snooze, but I will answer. I don't go on and say, and yet you can't attack me because I'm a victim. That is a chapter on human shields, and look, make your argument. They use their status as victims to go on TV and push for particular political results. When I make a political argument, I don't say, oh, and you can't attack me because my father died yesterday, and you can't attack me because these bad things happen. I hate when liberals do this. They do it all the time. They send out a victim to make their political point. You can make
She got a lot of applause from the crowd on that one, and that is so true. That is so true. The left uses children, they use women, minorities, intersectionality, group identity politics, whatever it is you want to call it. The left, progressives, the liberals, the Democrats, they continue. Remember what they did with Greta Thunberg? Oh, you can't talk about Greta Thunberg. She's under the age of 18. You got to wait till she gets older because she's just a child. So you get a pass for that. Oh, you can't talk about them or whatever. They had a tragedy that occurred. Well, they're using the tragedy to further something. And this is what they were doing. So if you just took what Anne said in her book or what her words said, and you'd say, wow, that's really mean. She's called them broads, wives of Americans, and whose husbands were killed on 9/11. You say she's calling them broads? And she's basically, attributing, an ulterior motive to them. But now when you take a look at the context and say, that is so true. They used their husbands' deaths to push a political agenda that they wanted to push. And all Anne is basically saying is, okay, if I was pushing a political agenda, at least I don't go up there and cry and say, oh, no, you can't attack me because I'm a woman. Oh, you can't attack me because, I broke up with my boyfriend the other day. You can't be doing that kind. You can't have it both freaking ways.
I never set anybody up. Believe me, I've made many arguments. But I like that whiny voice you just gave to people who lost their husbands in 9/11. It seems like you deeply care about 9/11. Really care. Okay,
No,
so
they're making political arguments that, I think their big thing was we had to have, what was it, a Department of Homeland Security, and I think they didn't want to go into Iraq, and we have to, look, I've said it, let's move on.
all right, so immigration.
I don't like victims making arguments, that's the point of that. They weren't the only example.
Okay.
And liberals do it all the time.
Okay, that's okay. All right. So on immigration, you said about Latinos. There's a cultural acceptance of child rape in Latino culture that doesn't exist in even the most dysfunctional American ghettos. When it comes to child rape, the whole family gets involved.
It's a really spicy book. I suggest you read it because there are about 100
She could have said, that's a hot tamale.
pages of the whole family getting involved, including, all of these, the way you end up finding them, and they're often famous cases, and both the government hides the statistics, but the media, and that's a lot of what my book is about, how the media hides the truth of all these immigrant crimes. And in doing my research, it was driving me crazy, so I have all these Spot the Immigrant chapters where, here's the New York Times article on it, here's the Houston Chronicle article on it. And it's not until, there's a trial or the INS and translators show up in court that you figure out that Baby Hope, New York City was put through the search for the rapist and murderer of Baby Hope for 20 years with millions of taxpayer dollars, the entire city involved in this. It made international news. This poor little 4-year-old girl's body found in a cooler off the Henry Hudson Parkway. Police, the resources that were devoted to this case, 20 years later, they finally get it. It's a whole nest of Mexican illegal aliens. The victim, the mother, everybody in the family knew. And all of the mainstream media articles, Daily News, New York Times, People Magazine, ABC, CBS, all of them, none of them mention that these were illegal aliens from Mexico. Same thing with a very famous gang rape down in Texas, more recently, gang rape murder of 2 little girls, 14 and one just turned 15 years old, cutting through a park in Texas on their way home from a pool party one summer night, and just a heinous, sickening gang rape. The girls were stomped, beaten, murdered. The men put cords around their necks, pulled as hard as they could on either side. A few days later, the bodies were found, had to be identified by their dental cavities. For a decade, this was making news. They get the suspects, they're rounded up, they're very aggressive, they're unrepentant. And it was not until they used the Mexicanness of the lead rapist. That's very weird. Are you going to boo the? What I'm saying is a fact. The fact that he was a Mexican national, not an American citizen, was used to overturn his death sentence. That is the first time the mainstream media so much put the word Mexican within a million miles after all of this mainstream media coverage. That is a lot of what my book is about, which is why it reads like Forensic Files and Law and Order. It is shocking crime after shocking crime, and yes, we are importing primitive cultures in enormous numbers, not just from Mexico, from the Middle East.
And so there it is, dropping another bombshell, talking about, primitive cultures. And, coming from all around the world. I'm trying to say what other word could she have, but, she wants to be provocative. She wants to be bombastic. That's what Anne is all about. And I don't agree with her on a whole host of things. I do agree with her on her immigration platform. I guess not 100% because there's some things to it or whatever, but when she's talking about primitive cultures, again, nuance, context. Let's continue and see how she sort of extricates herself out of this.
Well, I did not know we had a crowd that was so fond of clitorectomies and honor killings and child rape, but apparently we do. Americans aren't used to these sorts of crimes, and we're not really prepared. I'm not sure we have the manpower to deal with it.
Okay, so this interview is, all right guys, the interview is working. We are getting a clearer vision of Ann Coulter, okay? So if you are from one of those primitive cultures, then you know which side you're on, right? Is she on your side, or the Republicans on your side? I don't know. Well, I do know, of course not. And you mentioned a couple of horrific cases that happen to be done by Latinos, Mexican nationals, etc. Now, can I do that with white people? Easiest thing in the world. We can cover it. I mean, yes, there's the Jean-Benet Ramsey. There's every. There are a whole lot. When it's white people, it's irrelevant. When it's white people.
And another bomb drops. Irrelevant. Now, I think she could maybe use another word, but she's not relevant. But what she means here, or what I would basically say is, instead of using that word, is that if you have American citizens who have been here all their lives, born here, we have our own criminal element. We have our own serial rapists. We have our own serial killers. We have our own people that are committing, rape and murders and all kinds of things. But some of the crimes that are being committed by some of these other people coming from other countries, like, for example, we heard about the Colombian necktie, right? Where they cut the neck and take your tongue out and pull it through. Or they take tires, put gasoline on them, put the person inside and light them so they burn to death that way, using machetes to chop off arms and legs and heads, barbed wire, garroting. I mean, these are kind of things, okay, that, we just don't, those are the kind of crimes that are not usually done by native-born Americans. They are being done, the majority of them, that are coming in from other cultures, from other countries, the illegal aliens, so MS-13 gang. Those kind of things. I mean, when you were hearing things like in Los Angeles between the Blood and the Crips, I guess you could say, well, they're shooting each other with guns or shotguns or pistols or rifles. Okay, people are, people are getting killed one way or the other, but you get killed by a bullet or get killed by a shotgun or get killed by a handgun or whatever. Our sensibilities are, okay, you got shot. But then you hear about somebody, okay, that was basically stuffed in a tire, poured in with gasoline, lit the match. After that thing was done, then they chopped up the body and they left it out there. I mean, yes, murder is murder, but you're looking at one and going, who thinks of doing that? I mean, what type of a thinking has to occur for you to go and kill someone that way rather than if you just killed somebody, with a gun or a bullet? And I think that's what Anne is basically trying to say. That's what I'm saying.
Well, it's irrelevant, but when it's Mexicans, they are primitive. They are primitive. And you talk
about our native criminals. I'd love to deport our native
Absolutely.
criminals. We have no choice. There's no reason for us to be bringing in other countries' criminals, in addition to the fact that, yes, child rape, honor killings, clitorectomies, haven't seen a lot of that in Anglo-America. It is primitive culture, and I guess we also know that this is an audience that does support clitorectomies, honor killings, and child rape.
No, and we don't ascribe it to so-called primitive cultures coming from a certain ethnicity like you do. For example, Well,
we should be doing that, Cenk. Because you're right, clitorectomies is not part of the American culture inside here. It is a lot part, okay, in the African culture. May or may not have to do with religious things, but the religious thing is thrown inside there from the, basically saying, and that's something, again, that's not within the religion of Islam. It's just something that's cultural that's done. Just same thing with women, okay, putting on the veil and covering their face. There's nothing in the religion that says you're supposed to do that. Cover the head, put a scarf on if you want, but to cover your lips and your mouth and only the eyes showing, that's just culture by men. Okay, if you want to ascribe anything to it, okay, call that's a patriarchy of male-dominated society in those cultures. But absolutely, female genital mutilation, it's not part of American culture. It's not part of European culture. It has to do with the culture from that part of the world, usually from Africa. So that's all we're saying here. So absolutely, if you want to ascribe, but the thing is, don't say that. Don't ascribe that whatever they're doing to a certain culture. We don't want to do that. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Oh, forget about the victim's feelings of what happens with FGM, or clitoral cutting, or honor killings. What honor killings are going on here in the United States of America? But you have honor killings in other parts of the world. They bring it over here to our shores. And like she said, okay, the statistics by the government or by the local DA's office leave out the ethnicity, the heritage of the person. Just blank. Don't know what's going on. It's exactly what they're doing in Germany, exactly what they're doing in Sweden, exactly what they were doing in the United Kingdom and Great Britain when they had all those rape gangs that were going on. They knew exactly that was coming from which community. Back from the Pakistani Indian community, okay, that was over there in England. They knew at the Home Office, but they didn't want to, ruffle anybody's sensibilities. God forbid, jeez, that we upset the people that are raping children. It's a huge story over in England, hiding this, shoving it under the proverbial mat, so to speak. Amazing.
The example I was going to use was we just covered on the Young Turks about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, a guy who had raped a 2-year-old, and it was his girlfriend's daughter, and he was a white guy, And you would have said, why didn't they mention that he was white? He was so white when he did that rape.
I am quite sure the media reported that, and I'm not.
Yes, they report it as being white. Of course they're going to.
You for mentioning that. We don't have this ethical thing.
And I guess you're not getting
I
it.
must have to defend Jeffrey Dahmer because he's white. Don't punish him. But gosh, a lot of people are upset when I talk about Mexican child rapists and Muslim honor killing and Muslim clitorectomies. Oh, no, we must defend them. White people don't do that.
Hold on. And
So here again, Anne got some pretty good feedback for what she was saying because, again, as Cenk the Jank from the Young Turks, the Young Turks talked about, well, you know what, there was a white guy that raped and killed his girlfriend's 2-year-old daughter. Do you know how many stories we see now in the newspapers about an illegal alien killing, raping a child in their family? Not to mention illegal aliens raping and killing children of American citizens' families? But a lot of times the newspapers are going to hold back on the ethnicity if it's happening from an illegal alien. They're certainly not holding back if it's a white person that's doing it. No. They're certainly not doing that. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, like, share, and follow us. Let us know what you think in the comments below. You more pro Cenk the Jank, or you more pro Ann Coulter? We'd certainly like to know. Our final thoughts, as always, when you're right, you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.